I'm sitting in a room that costs me 6,000 baht a month. That's about $170. The walls are concrete, painted a dull yellow that's faded to something closer to the color of old newspapers. There's no air conditioning, just a small fan that rattles when it oscillates, pushing hot air from one side of the room to the other. Outside my window, I can hear motorbikes buzzing past, street vendors calling out in Thai, and the constant hum of a city that never seems to sleep. This is Chiang Mai, Thailand. This is my life now. 12 months ago, I was living in a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a garden, a covered carport, and a view of the mountains. I had a new pickup truck parked outside. I had a woman I loved cooking breakfast for me every morning, laughing at my jokes, holding my hand while we watched Thai dramas on television. I had a future that felt warm and full of promise. I was 65 years old, newly retired, and I genuinely believed I had finally found happiness after decades of hard work and loneliness. Now I have this room. A bed with a thin mattress, a plastic chair, a hot plate for cooking instant noodles, and a suitcase with everything I own folded inside. I lost $240,000 in 1 year, not to bad investments, not to medical bills, not to gambling or drugs. I lost it to a 29-year-old woman named Pim Chan, who I called Pim, who made me believe that I was the most important person in her world. She wasn't a bar girl. She wasn't working in the nightlife. She was a waitress in a cafe. She was quiet and sweet and everything I thought I wanted. And she took everything I had while I smiled and handed it over, believing every word she said. I came to Thailand looking for peace. I found chaos, and the price of that chaos was everything I'd saved for 40 years. If you've been enjoying the stories I create, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Your support is crucial for the growth of this channel and helps me dedicate time to making these videos despite my commitment to a full-time job. Thank you for being here. I remember the last morning in my apartment in San Diego like it was frozen in time. It was early March, 2023. The sun was coming through the blinds in sharp lines across the carpet. I'd already packed most of my things into storage. The furniture was gone. The walls were bare except for the lighter squares where picture frames used to hang. I stood in the middle of the living room with a duffel bag at my feet and a one-way ticket to Thailand on my phone. I was 64 years old. I'd worked as an electrician for 40 years, doing residential and commercial jobs all over Southern California. I wasn't rich, but I was careful. I didn't drink much. I didn't gamble. I didn't buy fancy cars or take expensive vacations. Every paycheck, I put a portion into savings. By the time I retired, I had $250,000 in the bank and a pension that would pay me about $1,800 a month, starting at 65. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to live modestly, enough to finally stop working and enjoy whatever time I had left. My marriage had ended 6 years earlier. No dramatic fights, no affairs, just two people who realized they didn't really know each other anymore. We sold the house, split everything down the middle, and went our separate ways. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment near the beach and spent my days working, coming home, eating dinner alone, and watching television until I fell asleep. I had a few buddies from work, but most of them were younger and had families. I didn't have kids. I didn't have hobbies that connected me to people. I was just existing. Retirement didn't change that. I thought it would. I thought I'd finally have time to relax, to travel, to enjoy life. But the reality was that I woke up every day with nothing to do and nobody to do it with. The cost of living in San Diego was outrageous. My rent alone was $2,000 a month for a tiny apartment that smelled like mildew. Groceries were expensive, gas was expensive, everything was expensive. I did the math and realized that my savings and pension would last maybe 10 or 15 years if I stayed in California. And then what? I'd be 80 years old, broke, and alone. That's when I started researching other options. I'd heard about Americans retiring in Mexico, Portugal, Ecuador, places where the cost of living was lower and the weather was warm. But something about Thailand kept pulling me back. I'd read articles online about expats living there for a fraction of what it cost in the States. I watched YouTube videos of retirees showing off their condos, eating meals for $2, getting massages for $5, living like kings on modest pensions. They all looked happy. They all looked free. I'd never been to Asia before. I'd barely left California except for work trips to Nevada and Arizona. But the idea of starting over somewhere completely different felt like exactly what I needed. A clean slate, a new chapter. maybe even a chance to meet someone and not spend the rest of my life alone. So I booked the flight. I sold or donated almost everything I owned. I closed my apartment lease. And on that last morning in San Diego, I stood in that empty room and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. The flight from Los Angeles to Bangkok took 17 hours with a layover in Tokyo. I'd never been on a plane that long before. By the time I landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport, my back was stiff, my legs were swollen, and I felt like I'd been awake for days. But when I walked out of the airport into the warm, humid night air, something in me woke up. The heat wrapped around me like a blanket. The sound of the city buzzed in the distance. Everything smelled like jasmine and exhaust and something frying in oil. It was overwhelming and exciting and completely foreign. I took a taxi to a hotel in Bangkok that I'd booked online. The driver didn't speak much English, but he smiled a lot and nodded along to whatever I said. The city at night was a blur of neon lights, street food carts, and motorbikes weaving through traffic like water flowing around rocks. I pressed my face to the window and watched it all pass by, thinking, this is it. This is my new life. The hotel was small but clean. It cost me 900 baht a night, which was about $25. Back in San Diego, that wouldn't even cover parking. I dropped my bags, took a cold shower, and collapsed onto the bed. I slept for 12 hours straight. The next few days, I wandered around Bangkok like a tourist. I visited temples with golden spires that reflected the sun so brightly I had to squint. I ate pad thai and som tam and mango sticky rice from vendors on the street. I took the BTS SkyTrain and got lost in neighborhoods where nobody spoke English, and I had to point at pictures on menus to order food. It was frustrating and exhilarating at the same time. But Bangkok was too big, too loud, too chaotic for what I wanted. I wasn't looking for nightlife or excitement. I wanted peace, quiet, a place where I could settle down and just breathe. So after a week, I booked a bus ticket north to Chiang Mai. Chiang Mai was different. It was smaller, slower, more manageable. The old city was surrounded by a moat and ancient walls. The streets were lined with temples and coffee shops and guest houses. The mountains loomed in the distance, green and hazy. The air was cooler than Bangkok, especially in the mornings and evenings. I walked through the Sunday night market and watched families eating together, tourists haggling over handmade crafts, monks in orange robes moving through the crowds like calm islands in a river of chaos. I rented a small apartment near the old city for 12,000 baht a month. It had one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom with a squat toilet that I had to get used to, and a balcony that overlooked a narrow street. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I bought a cheap motorbike for 30,000 baht so I could get around without relying on taxis. I started learning a few phrases in Thai. Sawadi krap, hello, kop kun krap, thank you, mai pen rai, no problem. For the first time in years, I felt like I was actually living instead of just waiting to die. I met Pim on a Tuesday afternoon in late April. I'd been in Chiang Mai for about 3 weeks by then, and I was starting to feel comfortable. I had a routine. I'd wake up early, take a walk around the moat, stop for coffee and a croissant at one of the bakeries, then spend the afternoon exploring different parts of the city. That day, I decided to check out Niman Hayman Road, which everyone called Niman. It was a trendy area full of boutique hotels, art galleries, and hipster cafes. Not really my scene, but I was curious. I walked into a small cafe called Ban Rao, which I later learned meant our home. It was quiet inside, just a few people working on laptops, and a couple sitting in the corner. The walls were painted white with wooden shelves holding books and plants. Soft acoustic music played in the background. Behind the counter was a young Thai woman with long black hair tied back in a ponytail. She wore a simple white t-shirt and jeans, no makeup, no fancy jewelry. She looked up when I walked in and smiled. "Sawadee-ka," she said, her voice soft and polite. "Sawadee crap," I replied, probably butchering the pronunciation. She giggled a little, covering her mouth with her hand. "You want coffee?" "Yes, please. Just a regular coffee. Hot." She nodded and moved to the espresso machine. I sat down at a table near the window and watched the street outside. Motorbikes zipped past. A tuk-tuk sputtered by with tourists hanging out the sides, taking pictures. A street vendor pushed a cart selling grilled bananas. It was all so different from San Diego, and I loved it. When she brought my coffee over, She set it down carefully and asked, "You are tourist?" "Sort of," I said. "I'm retired. I'm living here now." Her eyes widened a little. "Oh? You live in Chiang Mai?" "Yeah, just moved here a few weeks ago." "That's nice," she said, and she seemed genuinely interested. "You like Thailand?" "I love it," I said, and I meant it. "It's beautiful. The people are so friendly." She smiled again, and there was something warm and real about it. Not the polite, practiced smile you get from people in customer service. This felt different. We talked for a few more minutes. She told me her name was Pim Chan, but everyone called her Pim. She was from a small village in Lampang, about an hour south of Chiang Mai. She'd moved to the city a few years ago to find work and help support her family. She said she loved working at the cafe because it was quiet and she could practice her English with customers. I asked her how long she'd been working there. She said 3 years. I asked her if she liked Chiang Mai. She said yes, but sometimes she missed her village. It was simpler there, she said. Less stress. Her family had a small farm. Rice, a few chickens. Nothing fancy, but it was home. I don't know why, but something about the way she talked made me feel comfortable. She wasn't pushy. She wasn't flirty. She was just kind. And after weeks of being alone in a foreign country, kindness felt like the most valuable thing in the world. Before I left, she asked if I would come back. I said yes, and I meant it. Over the next month, I went to that cafe almost every day, sometimes twice a day. I'd order coffee in the morning, sit by the window, and read a book on my phone. Pim would chat with me during slow moments, asking about my life in America, what I did for work, why I chose Thailand. I told her about my 40 years as an electrician, my boring marriage, my lonely retirement in San Diego. She listened like she actually cared. She told me more about herself too. Her father had died 5 years ago from liver disease. Her mother still lived in the village with her younger brother, who was 16 and still in school. Pim sent money home every month to help pay for his education and keep the farm running. She said she didn't make much at the cafe, maybe 12,000 baht a month, but it was enough to survive and help her family a little. I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years, a connection. She wasn't like the women I'd met in bars or online. She wasn't trying to impress me or get something from me. She was just herself. Simple, honest, real. One afternoon, I asked if she'd like to have dinner with me after her shift. She hesitated for a moment, then smiled and said yes. We went to a small Thai restaurant near the night bazaar. I let her order for both of us because I had no idea what anything on the menu was. She chose northern-style dishes, khao swai, a coconut curry noodle soup, and sai ua, a spicy sausage made with lemongrass and chili. Everything was delicious. We talked for hours. She told me she'd never been in a serious relationship because most Thai men her age wanted someone more modern, someone who went to clubs and spent money on clothes and makeup. She said she was too traditional, too boring. I told her she wasn't boring at all. I told her I thought she was one of the most interesting people I'd met in Chiang Mai. She blushed and looked down at her plate. "You are very kind," she said quietly. By the end of the night, I didn't want it to end. I offered to drive her home on my motorbike. She lived in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, past the university, in a neighborhood where the streets weren't paved and the buildings were old and crumbling. When we pulled up, she turned to me and said, "Thank you for tonight. I had very good time." "Me too," I said. "Can I see you again?" She smiled. "Yes, I want to see you again." And just like that, everything changed. Within a few weeks, Pim and I were spending almost every evening together. She'd finish her shift at the cafe around 5, and I'd pick her up on my motorbike. We'd ride out to the countryside, park by a rice field, and watch the sunset. We'd eat dinner at small roadside restaurants where the food was cheap and authentic. We'd walk through the night markets, looking at handmade crafts and trying strange fruits I'd never heard of. She started teaching me more Thai. Simple phrases at first. How to order food, how to ask for directions, how to say, "I like you," Chan Chorp Kun. She'd laugh when I messed up the tones and the words came out meaning something completely different. But she was patient. She never made me feel stupid. I started noticing little things about her that made me fall deeper. The way she'd carefully count out coins at the market, making sure she got the best price for vegetables. The way she'd stop to pet street dogs and talk to them softly in Thai. The way she'd light incense at every temple we passed, closing her eyes and whispering prayers I couldn't understand. She had this gentleness about her that felt rare, especially compared to the brash, demanding world I'd left behind in California. My ex-wife had stopped touching me years before our divorce. She'd flinch when I reached for her hand. She'd turn away when I tried to kiss her goodnight. With Pim, it was the opposite. She'd reach for my hand without me asking. She'd lean into me when we sat together. She'd play with my hair while we watched movies on my laptop, her fingers gentle against my scalp. After years of feeling invisible, feeling unwanted, this kind of physical affection was like oxygen to a drowning man. I started to fall for her, really fall for her, and I could tell she felt something too. The way she looked at me, the way she held my hand when we walked, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder when we sat together watching the sun go down. We took a weekend trip to Pai, a small mountain town about 3 hours north of Chiang Mai. The roads twisted through the mountains, hairpin turns that made my stomach flip, but Pim just held onto my waist and laughed when I slowed down too much. We stayed in a cheap guest house that cost 300 baht a night. It had bamboo walls and a shared bathroom, but the view from our window looked out over green valleys and morning mist that clung to the hills like cotton. We rented bicycles and rode through the countryside, stopping at hot springs and waterfalls. Pim took photos of everything on her old smartphone, posing next to flowers and making peace signs like a teenager. It made me laugh. It made me feel young again, like I wasn't some 65-year-old retired electrician, but just a man on an adventure with someone he cared about. At night, we sat at a reggae bar by the river, drinking cheap beer and listening to live music. Pim didn't drink much, just one beer that she sipped slowly, but she smiled the whole time, swaying to the music. At one point, she leaned over and whispered in my ear, "I am very happy with you, Rick. You make me feel safe." Safe. That word stuck with me. I thought about what her life must have been like, growing up poor in a village, losing her father young, moving to the city alone to work for barely enough money to survive. Maybe I did make her feel safe. Maybe that's what this was really about. Not just love, but security. And what was wrong with that? Wasn't that what relationships were supposed to provide? One night, about 2 months after we met, she invited me to her apartment. It was the first time I'd been inside. The space was tiny. One room with a mattress on the floor, a small wardrobe, a hot plate, and a shared bathroom down the hall. But she'd made it cozy. There were pictures of her family on the wall, a small altar with incense and a Buddha statue, a potted plant by the window. She cooked dinner for me, fried rice with chicken and vegetables. It wasn't fancy, but it was made with care. We sat on the floor and ate together, and it felt more intimate than any meal I'd had in years. After dinner, she got quiet. She looked nervous, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. Finally, she spoke. "Rick," she said softly, "I need to tell you something." My heart started pounding. I thought she was going to say she didn't want to see me anymore, that I was too old, that this was a mistake. But instead, she said, "I think I love you." I stared at her. She stared back, her eyes wide and vulnerable. "I love you too," I said, and I meant it. She smiled, and tears filled her eyes. She leaned forward and kissed me. It was gentle and sweet, and everything I'd been hoping for. That night, I stayed with her. We didn't sleep much. We just talked and held each other, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone anymore. She told me about her childhood, about helping her father in the rice fields, about the day he died and how she'd had to be strong for her mother and brother. She cried when she talked about it, and I held her, feeling this overwhelming need to protect her, to make sure nothing ever hurt her again. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly she played that moment, how vulnerable she made herself seem, how she positioned herself as someone who needed saving. But at the time, all I felt was love. Pure, unconditional love, and the absolute certainty that I would do anything for this woman. Things moved quickly after that. Pim started spending more time at my apartment. She'd bring clothes over, cook meals for me, clean the place while I was out. She made my small, empty apartment feel like a home. I'd come back from a walk or a trip to the market and find her humming along to Thai music, folding laundry or chopping vegetables. It felt domestic. It felt real. But then, about 3 months into our relationship, she brought up her family for the first time in a way that made me uncomfortable. We were sitting on my balcony one evening, drinking Leo beer and watching the street below. She'd been quiet all day, and I could tell something was bothering her. "Rick," she said finally, I need to ask you something. Sure, I said, what is it? She hesitated, then spoke quietly. My mother. She is sick. She need to go to hospital, but we don't have money. I felt my chest tighten. What's wrong with her? She has pain in her stomach. For long time. She go to clinic in village, but doctors say she need to see specialist in Chiang Mai. But it costs 25,000 baht. We don't have 25,000 baht. That was about $700. Not a huge amount, but not nothing either. I looked at Pim. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring down at her hands, her fingers twisting nervously. I'm sorry to ask you, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I know it's not your problem, but I don't know what to do. I reached over and took her hand. Hey, it's okay. Don't apologize. She looked up at me, her eyes full of tears. I don't want you to think I'm with you for money. I love you. I really do. I know, I said. I know you do. And I believed her. I really did. She'd never asked me for anything before. She'd never even hinted that she wanted money. This was her mother. This was serious. I'll help, I said. Don't worry about it. Her face lit up. She threw her arms around me and started crying. Thank you, thank you, thank you, she kept saying. The next day, I went to the ATM and withdrew 25,000 baht. I handed it to her in an envelope. She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I will pay you back, she said. I promise. Don't worry about it, I said. Just take care of your mom. Looking back now, I can see it so clearly. That was the test. That was the moment she learned I would give her money if she asked. And once she knew that, everything changed. For the next few months, things continued to feel good. Pim's mother got the treatment she needed. Pim told me the doctors found an ulcer and gave her medication. She said her mother was doing much better and that she was so grateful for my help. She showed me photos of her mother smiling, holding up a thumbs-up sign. It made me feel good. It made me feel useful. But then the requests started coming more frequently. Her brother needed money for school supplies, 5,000 baht. Her mother needed a new roof on the house before the rainy season, 30,000 baht. The farm needed a new water pump, 15,000 baht. Each time, Pim would come to me with tears in her eyes, apologizing, promising it was the last time. And each time, I gave her the money, because I loved her, because I wanted to help, because I believed her when she said her family was struggling. By the time we'd been together for 6 months, I'd given her almost $60,000. But I didn't add it up back then. I didn't keep track. I just saw someone I loved in need, and I helped. Then one night in November, she brought up the idea of buying a house. We were lying in bed together, and she turned to me and said, Rick, I've been thinking, we should have our own place, a house, somewhere we can live together, build a life. I liked the idea. My apartment was fine, but it was small, and the walls were thin. I could hear my neighbors arguing at night. A house sounded perfect, a place that was ours. How much would something like that cost? I asked. Depends, she said, but I saw a nice house near my village, 3 bedrooms, small garden, very peaceful. The owner wants to sell. Only 3,200,000 baht. I did the math in my head. That was about $90,000. A big chunk of my savings, but not unreasonable. Back in San Diego, 90,000 wouldn't even buy you a parking space. Here, it could buy a whole house. Can foreigners buy property here? I asked. She shook her head. No, foreigners cannot own land in Thailand, but we can put it in my name, and then it is ours. We live together. It is our house. I hesitated. Something about that didn't sit right, but she saw my hesitation and quickly added, Rick, I love you. I want to marry you. We will be together forever. The house will be for both of us, but legally, it must be in Thai name. She looked at me with those big, hopeful eyes. She talked about how we could have a garden, how her mother could come visit, how we'd have space for a real kitchen so she could cook proper meals, how it would be our home, our future. And I believed her, because I wanted to believe her, because I was 65 years old, and I didn't want to spend the rest of my life alone in a rented apartment. So I said yes. 2 weeks later, I transferred 3,200,000 baht into her bank account. We went to the land office together. I watched as she signed the papers. I watched as the house became legally hers. And I told myself it was fine. We were together. We were in love. What was mine was hers. We moved into the house in December. It was about 30 minutes outside Chiang Mai, in a quiet village surrounded by rice fields. The house was simple but comfortable. 3 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen with a real stove and refrigerator, a bathroom with a proper shower. There was a small yard with mango trees and a wooden fence. It felt like a home. Pim was so happy. She decorated the house with Thai textiles and plants. She invited her mother and brother to visit. They stayed for a week, and I cooked for them, tried to communicate in broken Thai, and felt like I was part of a family for the first time in years. But the requests didn't stop. In January, Pim said she wanted to start a small business. She had an idea to sell handmade soaps and candles at the weekend markets. She said it would give her something to do and bring in extra income, but she needed a truck to transport her products. How much? I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. 1 million baht, she said, for a good used truck, Toyota, very reliable. 1 million baht, $28,000. I should have said no. I should have told her we couldn't afford it. But she had this way of making everything sound so reasonable. She talked about how the business would help pay for the house, how she'd be able to contribute, how it was an investment in our future. So I gave her the money, and she bought a red Toyota Hilux that she parked in front of the house. But the business never really happened. She went to the market a few times, sold some candles, then stopped. She said it was too much work. She said people didn't appreciate handmade things. The truck just sat there, collecting dust. Then in March, she told me her family had debts. Her mother had borrowed money from a loan shark to pay for her father's funeral years ago, and the interest had been piling up. They owed 200,000 baht. If they didn't pay, the loan shark would take the farm. 200,000 baht, about $5,500. I was starting to feel the weight of it all. My savings were shrinking fast, but she cried and begged and told me her family would lose everything, so I paid it. Then there was another debt, and another. Always something, always urgent, always life or death. A cousin needed surgery. 60,000 baht. Her brother's school needed new computers, and she'd promised to donate. 40,000 baht. The village temple was being renovated, and it was bad luck not to contribute. 25,000 baht. Each time, Pim would present these needs with tears in her eyes, with desperation in her voice, and I'd find myself at the ATM again, watching my balance drop lower and lower. By May, I'd given her close to $200,000 total, and my bank account, which had once held $250,000, was down to about 50,000. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, my heart racing, doing math in my head. How long could I survive on what was left? What would happen when it ran out? My pension wouldn't start for another few months. I was burning through my life savings at a terrifying rate. That's when things started to change between us. Pim stopped being affectionate. She stopped cooking for me. She started spending more time on her phone, texting people in Thai that I couldn't understand. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd snap at me. Just friends. Why you ask so much? The warmth that had drawn me to her in the beginning was gone. She'd sleep on the far edge of the bed, her back to me. When I tried to touch her, she'd pull away, saying she was tired or not in the mood. Days would go by where we barely spoke. She'd spend hours in the bedroom with the door closed, talking on the phone in rapid Thai that I couldn't follow. I tried to tell myself it was just stress. Maybe she was worried about her family. Maybe she was going through something I didn't understand. I'd suggest we go out to dinner, take a trip, do something together like we used to, but she'd always have an excuse. Too tired, too busy, not interested. She started going out at night, saying she was meeting friends in Chiang Mai. She'd come home late, smelling like cigarettes and alcohol. When I asked where she'd been, she'd get angry. You don't trust me? After everything I do for you? Everything she did for me? I wanted to ask what exactly she'd done for me besides take my money, but I kept quiet. I was afraid that if I pushed too hard, she'd leave. And despite everything, despite the money, despite her coldness, I didn't want to lose her. Because losing her meant admitting I'd been wrong. It meant admitting I'd wasted everything. It meant being alone again. I started noticing other things too. The neighbors would look at me strangely when I left the house. They'd whisper to each other in Thai, then stop talking when I got close. One time, I saw a man leaving our property early in the morning when I came back from a walk. He jumped on a motorbike and sped away before I could get a good look at him. When I asked Pim about it, she said it was just someone asking for directions. But I knew. Deep down, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to face it. I tried to talk to her. I tried to fix things, but she was cold, distant, like I was an inconvenience. And then one night in late June, she didn't come home at all. I waited up all night for Pim to come home. I called her phone 20 times, no answer. I sent text messages, nothing. By the time the sun came up, I was sick with worry. I thought maybe she'd been in an accident, maybe something terrible had happened. Then, around 7 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A text message from her. "You don't understand my life. I need to go." That was it. 11 words. No explanation, no apology. Just gone. I called her again. The phone went straight to voicemail. I drove into Chiang Mai, went to the cafe where we'd met. The owner said Pim hadn't worked there in months. She'd quit not long after we moved into the house. I went to her old apartment. The landlord said she'd moved out in December. No forwarding address. I felt like I was losing my mind. Where was she? Why was she doing this? I drove back to the house, and that's when I noticed the truck was gone. I went inside. Half of her clothes were gone. Her jewelry, her phone charger, the photo of her family that had been on the shelf, all gone. I sat on the couch and stared at the walls. The house was so quiet, too quiet. Over the next few days, I tried to find her. I asked neighbors if they'd seen her. Most of them avoided me, but one older woman, who spoke a little English, finally told me the truth. "Pim has boyfriend," she said, looking uncomfortable. "Thai man, he come here sometimes, when you not home." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What?" She nodded. "Many people know, but they don't say. They think you know already." I didn't know. I had no idea. The woman told me Pim and her boyfriend had been together for years. He'd been living in a village nearby the whole time. The neighbors had seen him coming and going. They thought I was just some old foreigner who was paying for everything while Pim lived her real life with someone else. I went to the land office to ask about the house. They confirmed what I already knew. The house was in Pim's name. Legally, I had no claim to it. I couldn't sell it. I couldn't take it back. It was hers. The truck was registered in her name too. Everything I'd paid for, everything I'd given her was gone, and she was gone with it. I sat in that house for 3 more days, alone, trying to process what had happened. Then I packed my suitcase, locked the door, and left. I moved into the cheap room where I'm sitting now. 6,000 baht a month, no air conditioning, no kitchen, just me and the sound of the city outside my window. I contacted a lawyer to see if there was anything I could do. He said no, she hadn't broken any laws. I'd given her the money willingly. I'd put the house in her name. There was no contract, no legal agreement. I had no case. I lost $240,000 in 1 year, and I had nothing to show for it. I've been living in this room for 3 months now. My savings are almost gone. I have about $10,000 left. My pension started last month, so I have $1,800 coming in every month. It's enough to survive here, barely, but it's not the life I imagined. I think about Pim every day. I think about the way she looked at me that first day in the cafe, the way she held my hand, the way she cried when I gave her money for her mother. Was any of it real, or was it all an act from the very beginning? I talked to other expats here, older guys like me who've been in Chiang Mai for years. They all have stories, different women, different details, but the same basic plot. Farang meets Thai woman. Farang falls in love. Farang loses everything. One guy told me Pim was known in the expat community. He said she'd done this before, multiple times, different foreigners who all thought they were the one. He said her boyfriend was in on it. They'd target lonely older men, play the long game, drain them dry, then disappear. I felt like an idiot. I felt like a fool. How could I have been so blind? But the truth is, I wanted to believe her. I was lonely. I was desperate for connection, and she gave me exactly what I needed. Attention, affection, hope. I paid for it, dearly. There's a coffee shop I go to now, not the one where I met Pim, but a different one on the other side of town. It's run by an older Australian man named Greg who's been here for 20 years. He's heard my story. He's heard hundreds like it. One morning, he sat down across from me without asking and said, "You know what your real mistake was?" I shook my head. "You thought you could skip the line?" he said. "You thought you could have everything you wanted. Companionship, affection, intimacy without earning it. You thought your money was a shortcut to happiness." His words stung because they were true. Back in San Diego, if I'd wanted to meet someone, I would have had to put in effort, join clubs, go to social events. Build a connection over time through shared interests and genuine compatibility. But here, I thought I could just show up with my savings account and have a ready-made relationship. A beautiful young woman who'd cook for me, take care of me, love me. I thought my money made me special, made me different from all the other lonely old men who came before me. But money doesn't make you special, it makes you a target. I've started volunteering at a temple near my room. I can't do much, but I help the monks sweep the courtyard in the mornings, and they let me sit in on their meditation sessions. I don't understand the chants, and my mind wanders constantly, but there's something calming about the routine, the structure, the silence. One of the monks, Fra Sumchai, speaks decent English. He's probably in his 50s, though it's hard to tell. He has this gentle way about him, never judging, never preaching. One day, after meditation, he asked me why I looked so sad all the time. I told him a shortened version of my story. When I finished, he nodded slowly. Attachment, he said simply. You attach to idea of happiness, not happiness itself. You attach to woman, not to truth of who she was. I loved her, I said, feeling defensive. Maybe, he said. But did you love her? Or did you love how she made you feel about yourself? I didn't have an answer for that. I still don't. The hardest part of all this isn't the money. Money can be earned again, saved again. I'm 66 years old with a pension. I won't starve. I won't be homeless. I'll survive. The hardest part is the shame, the humiliation, the knowledge that I was played so completely, so thoroughly, that I handed over my entire life savings with a smile on my face. Every time I see an older Western man walking hand in hand with a young Thai woman, I wonder if he knows. I wonder if he's making the same mistakes I made. Part of me wants to stop him, to warn him, to tell him my story. But I never do. Because maybe he's different, maybe his relationship is real, or maybe he needs to learn this lesson the way I did. I'm not going back to America. I can't afford to. Even if I could, what would I go back to? No home, no family, no friends. At least here, my pension goes further. At least here, I can survive. I spend my days walking around the city, eating cheap meals, sitting in parks. I watch other expats with their Thai girlfriends, holding hands, smiling, looking happy. And I wonder if they know. I wonder if they're heading down the same path I went down. Some of them probably are. And some of them will be fine. Maybe their relationships are real. Maybe they're smarter than I was. Maybe they'll get the happy ending I thought I was getting. But I know the truth now. The most expensive thing in Thailand isn't the houses or the cars or the fancy dinners. It's love, or the illusion of it. I came here looking for peace. I came here for one last happy chapter. Instead, I found chaos. I found heartbreak. And I found out that loneliness makes you do stupid things. I don't blame Thailand. Thailand is a beautiful country. The people are kind. The culture is rich. But there are people here, just like anywhere, who see vulnerable foreigners as opportunities. And I was the perfect target. Older, alone, naive, desperate to feel loved. I tell my story now to anyone who'll listen, not because I want pity, but because I want to warn people. If you're thinking about coming here, if you're thinking about finding love, about starting over, please be careful. Don't do what I did. Don't hand over your life savings to someone you've known for a few months. Don't put property in someone else's name. Don't ignore the red flags. And if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Sometimes, late at night, I lie awake in this hot room and think about what I'd tell my younger self. What advice I'd give to the 64-year-old Rick who stepped off that plane in Bangkok with hope in his heart and money in his pocket. I'd tell him that loneliness is temporary, but poverty is long. I'd tell him that real love doesn't come with a price tag, doesn't require constant payments, doesn't need to be purchased. I'd tell him that the woman who truly loves you won't ask you to buy her a house after 6 months, won't disappear when the money runs out, won't have a secret boyfriend living nearby while you're paying for everything. But I know he wouldn't listen. Just like the men I see now won't listen to me. Because when you're that lonely, when you're that desperate for connection, you don't want to hear the truth. You want to believe in the fairy tale. You want to believe that you're special, that you're different, that your story will end differently than all the others. I'm 66 years old now. I live in a room with no air conditioning. I eat instant noodles most nights. I have almost nothing left. But I learned something. I learned that the price of loneliness is high, and the cost of believing in the wrong person can be everything you have. That's my story. That's how I went from retired and comfortable to broke in 1 year. And the worst part? I still miss her, even knowing what she did, even knowing it was all a lie. That's the cruelest part of all.